Welcome to the SES Center's new podcast, Perspectives. We are a New Delhi based think tank, and this podcast is a platform for our researchers to discuss technology policy issues in an accessible format. In this episode, we discuss the popularity of UPI as a digital payment system in India. We also examine the debate around introducing a merchant discount rate or a transaction charge for UPI transactions.
Hey guys, so yesterday I was trying to make a payment by my UPI app, and I realized that there are quite a few new features that they've added over the last year or so. And I can now pay using my credit card, or I can even pay without my PIN for certain transactions in this new feature called UPI Lite. And I think it's been really fascinating to see how this UPI system has evolved, and how we continue to see so many innovations as far as payments are concerned in India.
Yeah, and the popularity of UPI actually, I think, has really exploded because it has become the world's most popular alternative payment method, right? With more than 400 million active users in the country, and with a transaction value just last month of more than 20 lakh crores. Just for comparison's sake, credit card transactions in India are have a monthly value of around 40,000 crores. So the scale with which UPI is working is immense, right? Every 4 out of 5 digital transactions are being done through UPI. And it is because of this scale that it has kind of revolutionized India's fintech landscape. Millions of people have been included into the formal financial system due to the prevalence of UPI.
Yeah, Gaurav, the inclusion of more unorganized sectors and participants into the economy is really obvious when you see how UPI is being accepted by everyone from a cab driver to a street vegetable vendor. Whereas we still see that a lot of small kirana stores or grocery shops, they don't accept card payments, but UPI is being used by some of the most it's being used for the most small value transactions as well. And this popularity, it's because of a number of reasons. One of the main important ones being that it's so convenient to use the interface, the ability to use it through mobile apps. It really helps the penetration of UPI. And there is some amount of trust that people have established because it's not backed, but at least approved by the government in a way, and that helps people trust a new technology and adopt it more. The third reason being interoperability. You can have a different kind of UPI app. It can be the Bheem app, or it can be GPay or PhonePe, or a number of them, and you can still have a transaction with someone who uses a different app. So you're not restricted by which platform or which app you're using. But when it comes down to it, one of the most attractive features of UPI is that it is free. People hesitate to use card transactions in smaller businesses because there are certain charges known as MDR attached to them. But when it comes to UPI, it's absolutely free. I think it was in 2022 when the RuPay debit card and UPI, especially for transactions below 2000 rupees, were made free. The whole idea was to promote these channels of payment, and it's worked beautifully. People are really relying on UPI for day to day transactions. And it's not just peer to peer. That is, it's not just me sending my friend money after going out together. It's also peer to merchant. That is, when I'm paying my, vegetable vendor, or I'm recharging my mobile phone. So the reasons for the popularity of UPI ultimately also boil down to the fact that it is just so cost effective for the public to use.
Yeah, I think the fact that there's no merchant discount rate or any fee of that sort has been a key reason propelling UPI's popularity. But I think at the same time, it's had some interesting spillover effects for other players in the ecosystem. And essentially, when you look at the UPI ecosystem, it's not just comprised of your banks where you have an account. There are also payment service providers like your GPay and your PhonePay who provide the apps and also have some kind of linkages and infrastructure. Now, usually, this payment service provider earns a certain fee, like you alluded to, Akanksha, the merchant discount rate on every transaction that's made between, say, 1 to 3%. And this helps them stave off costs that they're incurring for providing this infrastructure, ensuring its security, making it available to users at scale, and other such costs, right? But in the case of UPI, they're not allowed to charge this. So essentially, what is happening is that all of these transactions are free for the customer and for the merchant, but there's no revenue being generated for the either the bank or the payment service provider. And eventually, at the end of the day, all of them are for-profit entities, so they need to have a commercial interest or a commercial incentive to be able to continue to expand the ecosystem. And that's why, interestingly, over the last couple of years, there have been increasing calls from fintech companies as well as larger technology companies like an Amazon Pay to introduce some kind of a fee on UPI transactions. And even the RBI actually in 2022 had suggested that there should be a fee, and this should be a fee which is determined in accordance with market forces. And it's something that should be left to the merchants, the payment service providers, and the banks to sort of discuss and agree on between themselves. But at that point, the government came out very clearly and said that, look, UPI is digital public infrastructure. It's something that we want to provide in association with the private sector to make payments easier and also to support the goal of financial inclusion. And to this end, they've tried to support the other ecosystem players by providing a kind of a subsidy. So every year in the budget, a certain amount is set aside to cover a certain percentage of each UPI transaction that these platforms are helping. But I think there is an increasing realization that for this overall ecosystem to grow and even beyond what it has already achieved, there might be a need to introduce some kind of fee for some transactions.
Yeah, and I think the government and the National Payments Corporation of India, particularly the NPCI, which manages UPI, is also kind of realizing this because it's difficult to charge a transaction fee on regular UPI transactions, especially small value transactions, due to the reasons you guys have mentioned. But they have started imposing some fees on certain specialized transactions which are made through UPI. So, for example, when you do a mobile wallet payment through UPI, which are essentially when you load up some money into a mobile wallet on GPay, PhonePe, etc., there is a 1.1% fee charged on those kind of payments. And just now in August, the NPCI has announced that credit-based transactions which are done through UPI, so the transactions which are kind of replacing credit cards, will have a 1.2% fee imposed on them. The objective right now appears to be to charge higher value transactions to make up some of this cost, and to this in some way subsidizing lower value transactions, which are kind of enabling this financial inclusion in the country and is the bedrock of uh, how UPI functions right now.
Yeah, Gaurav, that is a very intuitive approach to take, because whenever any fee is charged on a transaction, it's not just the app or the bank which is going to be charged. Finally, that amount is going to be passed down to the end user, to you and I, and people are aware of this. In the recent survey, I think 75% of the people who were surveyed, they said that if there is any fee attached to UPI, they will stop using that platform. People are aware of what they can afford and what they can't, and they're clear about this, that if there's a fee attached, then we want no any part of UPI. Now, that would really set us back in this whole digital inclusion project where we have been able to bring people from the informal sector into, the whole economy and the payment system. And there have been a lot of interesting attempts to even expand financial inclusion to women. The NPCI has a project where they're trying to increase the onboarding of women into the UPI system. At the point when this project was launched, only 25% of UPI users were women. So they're innovating and coming out with proposals to increase that. But now, if there is any sort of charge that will impact the end user, it may, roll back all the gains that they have had in including more marginalized people or women into this formal economy. So I think this, if any charge has to be placed, because yes, UPI needs to be sustainable in the long run as well, then it has to be in a phased form, and it should not affect people who are a part of the small value transactions, and there can be some gradation so that while the system feeds itself, we don't end up losing the benefits of it in terms of digital inclusion and financial inclusion.
Yeah, Akanksha, I think that a progressive and graded approach is probably the best way to go to ensure that the dual objectives of ensuring financial inclusion while also having this robust Indian payment infrastructure, both of those objectives are met. And I think what we'll also increasingly see is innovation by these payment service providers themselves to develop new revenue streams. So I'm sure you guys have already seen, like if you go to a phone pay or a Paytm or a different app, instead of just focusing on payments, they also have a retail section where you can purchase goods. They're also offering you insurance and mutual fund products and other things. And they can earn money off of these right now, like they can't for UPI. So I think this dual approach of introducing a progressive, gradual fee structure while also encouraging these payment service providers and other ecosystem entities to innovate and develop new revenue streams is possibly going to be the best way to achieve the objectives that we have outlined for UPI.